الحضور الكريم، نرحب الآن بمقدم الحفل السيد محمد الطميحي.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Master of Ceremonies, Mr. Mohammed Al-Tumehi.
السيدات والسادة ضيوف منتدى التنافسية الدولي 2016، أهلا بكم. سيركز المنتدى على مدار يومين على القطاعات التنافسية ذات التأثير المباشر على التنمية الاقتصادية والبشرية، قطاعات مثل الرعاية الصحية والنقل والتعليم، تكنولوجيا المعلومات والاتصالات والسياحة وغيرها من القطاعات البارزة. لدينا 12 جلسة نقاش، 9 كلمات رئيسية، 5 ورش عمل والمزيد من الفعاليات التي ستنطلق بعد قليل بمشاركة فاعلة من عدد من أصحاب المعالي الوزراء والسفير الأمريكي في المملكة بإدارة مقدم برنامج هارد توك على قناة BBC السيد ستيفن ساكور. فأهلا بكم.
حضورنا الكريم، نرحب الآن بمذيع BBC السيد ستيفن سكور.
Ladies and gentlemen, presenter of Hard Talk and BBC World News, Mr. Stephen Sackur.
Thank you, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Salamu alaikum, sabah al-khair. I'm Stephen Sackur, and I'm going to be your host and panel moderator this morning. Let me invite onto the stage all of my panelists. So panelists, please do take your seats, and I'm going to introduce you in just a moment. We have a fantastic opening panel session for you, ladies and gentlemen, as you will see as our panelists make their way to their chairs. It is a great pleasure for me to be introducing and directing the first panel session at this 9th Global Competitiveness Forum. And ladies and gentlemen, please do sit down. I first came to Saudi Arabia some 2.5 decades ago as a BBC reporter. This is my second visit, can you believe? Only my second visit. And so much has changed in this country over 2.5 decades. It's actually quite hard for me to grasp the extraordinary degree of change and growth in this country. But these are very difficult times. Certainly in terms of the economy here, there is one overriding story right now, which we're all aware of, and that is the plunging oil price. But more than that, this country is also at a crossroads in terms of its determination to transition to a competitive 21st century diversified economy. We know that the Deputy Crown Prince is determined to change the way this country does its economic business, and change comes with difficulties. I actually wanted to begin by just reading to you the first line of The Economist magazine's cover story on Saudi Arabia. This just from a couple of weeks ago. For years, The Economist opined, Saudi Arabia seemed inert, relying on its vast oil wealth and the might of its American patron. But now, a sandstorm of change is rousing the desert kingdom. That, ladies and gentlemen, is our theme this morning, change. A sandstorm of change and how Saudi Arabia is going to respond to it. So let me introduce my panel to you. Next to me here on the panel, we have His Excellency Tawfiq Al-Rabeeah. Now, he is Minister of Commerce and Industry. Many of you will know him very well. Next to him, His Excellency Khalid Al-Falih, Minister of Health and indeed Chairman of Aramco as well. So wearing 2 very important hats today, we welcome you both, and thank you so much for making time during your busy schedules. Third on our panel, the Ambassador of the United States here in Saudi Arabia. Welcome to you, Joseph Westphal. Thank you for being here as well. And at the end of our panel, a very warm welcome to Deborah Wince-Smith, who is President and CEO of the US Council on Competitiveness and President of the Global Federation of Competitiveness Councils. So we've got a terrific panel for our opening theme, which is competitive sectors. What sectors here in the kingdom will drive growth and innovation into the future? This, I think, is a great opening to the conference because it allows us to talk about what will drive transformation in Saudi Arabia over the next 5 years, which I guess is the time frame that the Deputy Crown Prince is talking about. So without further ado, let us begin our discussion. I, of course, am the presenter, the anchor of Hard Talk on the BBC, and I've been asked already by my great panel whether I'm going to have my Hard Talk claws out today. I've told them I'm going to be the pussycat, not the tiger today, but I might change my mind, so we'll see how things go. Also, I should say, as we begin, that you guys can very much be a part of this discussion. I'm going to lead some questions, but we want interactivity. I hope somewhere on the screens we can bring up the email address and the Twitter hashtag where you can file questions, which will come out on this little tablet I've got here. So do feel free to put a question in writing, which I will transmit to the panel. And we'll also have time toward the end for some questions from the floor with our roving microphones as well. So we do want to get your input into this discussion. But let me begin, and if I may, I'm going to start with you, Minister Falih. I've laid out the big theme, and The Economist magazine did it too. You guys face a whole series of challenges, some would say problems right now, and you have to figure out how to develop a much more diversified, innovative, growth-based economy that is not all about oil. You're the chairman of Aramco, but we need to get away from an Aramco-driven economy. How does Saudi Arabia do it, and what sectors are going to be most important?
أولا بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وأسعد الله صباحكم جميعا. Stephen, thank you for the introduction, but I will take exception with the Economist's quoted metaphor of a sandstorm. I think we're here in the pleasant time of the year in Saudi Arabia where we like to use rain as the metaphor after which we're going to get, inshallah, a lot of prosperity, and the spring is coming up. If you look at the economy of Saudi Arabia in the long term, and everybody here, I am convinced, is thinking in terms of decades and indeed generations to set their compass for investment and partnering with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. You can't think in terms of years or short periods. If you look at the last 50 years, the economy of Saudi Arabia has grown at an incredible pace. On average, despite the cyclicality of the oil business and periods like we're experiencing today, on average, the Saudi economy has clocked 5% overall, and as a result, the size of the economy has multiplied a number of times during that period. I have every reason to believe that the next 50 years are going to equal or exceed that rate of development.
But if I may, Minister, that's largely been oil.
That's true. That's the next half of my statement, is that it's going to switch from a simple quantitative growth based on commodity export to one that is qualitatively different, that is more evenly distributed, and that is going to mobilize more resources than that of exports of natural resources. So you're going to see the untapped potential of the Saudi people. You're going to see innovation going forward as the economy decidedly grows into the knowledge. Whereas you're going to see sectors that have been a weight on the government become drivers of future growth. ICT will be one of them. Healthcare, where I have the honor of leading that sector, has tremendous growth as we turn the significant challenges we face and every other developed and developing economy faces into opportunity. Tourism and improving the quality of life. I talked about qualitative elements of our growth story. So tourism and improving the quality of life for Saudi citizens with services, everything from banking to communication to hospitality to transportation. All of these are tremendous. And last but not least is switching more from an export-driven to one that is a manufacturing-driven, export of commodities and commodity-based commodities, if I can call it that, to one where we're going to manufacture more and more value-added and increasingly high-tech content. That is going to require a lot of high-quality jobs, so education and preparing our people to be the providers of these services and innovation will be the next challenge you talked about, but I think it also holds the key for the prosperity that is yet to come.
Great. Well, that's a terrific overview for an opening statement. I thank you very much for that, Minister. I'm now going to invite Minister Al-Rabeeah to give us his opening thoughts on this big picture question of how to deliver transformation, what sectors we need to be looking at. But before you start, Minister, I know you've also brought with you a very short video put together by your ministry. So let's, if we can, run the video, and then I'm going to ask you a question. Can we run the video? Okay, well, we thank the Ministry for that. Minister, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I know the Minister is going to address us in Arabic and in English, but for those of you who are operating in English today, you might well want to use your headsets, which you have with you.
Okay.
Here's my opening thought for you, Minister. I'm very mindful of Ronald Reagan's words when he said the most dangerous, alarming sentence in the English language is, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." So, you know, you in the ministry seem to believe that you can pump prime, you can boost and deliver innovation and a transformational economy. Isn't the best thing government can do simply get out the way altogether?
اوكي. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. أولا سعيد أني معكم في هذا اللقاء الجميل وربما يمكن أفضل أتكلم بالعربي، لكن بحكم أن المتحدثين معي هنا يتكلموا باللغة الإنجليزية فاسمحوا لي أن أستخدم اللغة الإنجليزية في أكثر حديثي. ممكن أسوي بعض الترجمة مع أني أعلم أن هناك ترجمة موجودة. Thank you, Stephen, for your comments. It's definitely in Saudi Arabia we are facing a big challenge with the oil prices. Saudi Arabia depends on oil, on its revenue. We know it's about like 80% of our revenue coming from oil. Now the oil prices went down, and I always like to be positive. You know, we all know the Holland disease, and the oil, frankly, brought the Holland disease to Saudi Arabia.
You mean the tulips?
Yes.
Yeah, the great tulip boom and bust. Yeah.
Absolutely. So it's definitely a big challenge in how to get out of this kind of, let's say, dependence on oil and be more innovative and diversify the economy. The good news, I see the potential to do that, with the current oil prices, made us really think and serious to take this actions or diversification is as a major goal to achieve in this country. And I'm very optimistic. We have a reasonably good education system. We have good talent. We have to utilize this talent in very innovative way to get results. I see us in the government and the ministry, especially, have to work as servant and facilitators for the private sector to excel. We in the ministry try to be innovative to promote innovation. We try to use technology to bring the best in quality services. In terms of your question, what kind of sectors that are promising, it's very hard to speculate which sectors, but I would add to what Khalid said, that there are many different sectors that are very promising. IT or ICT is very promising. Saudi Arabia, I see lots of innovation. We have good connectivity here in the kingdom. So ICT might be one of the sectors that may be or grow in Saudi Arabia. The finance sector is very promising. We have great effort done by SAMA and by CMA, and also the ministry. We are upgrading all of the regulations related to that promote better financing and better promotion and facilitations for companies and the private sector. So the finance sector, I think there will be huge development in the next few years. So we'll see certain development on that regard. On the industrial side, I see more downstream development. We do have some downstream manufacturing in Saudi Arabia, but I think it's not to the level that we expect with the challenge that we have, and we plan to promote more downstream. So I'm very optimistic to see more value-added products in the downstream industry. Water conservation is definitely of interest to us. Saudi Arabia has limited resources in terms of water, so that is very promising. Renewable products, I see some concentration on that, so that is also promising in Saudi Arabia.
Seems to me that one of the keys for Saudi Arabia is to convince the outside world that it is truly open, culturally and in terms of its mindset for business, that it is desperately keen to attract outside investment, that it's going to make access to Saudi Arabia, both in terms of markets and just physical access to getting inside the country, to operating here, as easy as possible. I think it's fair to say that to the outside world, Saudi Arabia is not seen as the most open economy at the moment, the most sort of easily accessible economy. Is that going to change?
Absolutely. The point is, let me say, definitely we are keen to develop ourselves and to open up more. But there is some misconception on this regard, and you can ask the companies that invest in Saudi Arabia. It's not as what the outsiders think. I think we are behind in promoting Saudi Arabia outside Saudi Arabia, and we have to work harder on that regard. And also, we need always to develop ourselves and bring and develop our system to have better facilitations and to open up the country more. But as I mentioned, it's not as bad as what the people think.
Well, that's an interesting comment, and let's put that to our sort of outside observers who are thoroughly engaged with Saudi Arabia in a professional sense. Ambassador Westphal, let me start with you. I think you've been here for about 6 months.
2 years.
2 years? Oh, I'm way out of date. Forgive me for that. Okay, so you've got no excuses now for not having strong opinions on what you see.
I have strong opinions.
In Saudi Arabia today. So let's hear it from you. I noticed in my morning newspaper yesterday that FDI into this country was down 5% last year. Is that because you think people are losing confidence in the Saudi Arabian economic story? What's going on?
No, I don't think so. I think we're all struggling with globalization and keeping up with the fast pace of the economies today. And as you saw, what happened in China just a week ago affected world markets everywhere, even in the most sophisticated markets in the world. So we're all struggling through this. And Saudi Arabia, in my view, is a country that has all of a sudden, very rapidly and very quickly, jumped to be a G20 country, a player in the world stage, a player that is dealing with the superpowers, the US, the Russias, the Chinas, and obviously needs to adapt a government that is capable of managing those very complex issues that we as a country, the United States, your country, Great Britain, has dealt with now for hundreds of years. We have a lot of experience with that. I think Saudi Arabia has to have a government system that can be adaptable to that globalization.
Do you think it has it? I mean, what's your advice to the Saudi Arabian government right now? You've managed change yourself. You were in charge of the US Army, pretty much 1 million people sort of under your thumb, and you had to deliver change because things have changed in the United States. So
Yeah.
what's your advice to the Saudi government in terms of delivering change and making sure that innovation is happening?
So 3 things I would say. Number 1 is you got to get the government out of the way. And that is very difficult in a country where the economy and everything is run by the government. We struggle with that in the United States, as every country does. But you've got to get the government out of there.
So privatization is a big part of it.
Privatize as much as you can, in my view, and allow the government to build public-private partnerships. I think the minister is focusing a little bit on that as we move forward, and I think that's an important dimension. The public-private partnership is complex, but it can happen and it can work. You mentioned the U.S. Army. Let me give you an example. In government, we don't make widgets, we don't make parts, we don't build anything. All we do is develop processes for managing things. But those processes can get very antiquated, very bureaucratic, very slow. They can hamper business opportunity and innovation. So what we were trying to do in transforming the Army was to change the processes, eliminate the committees, reduce the number of meetings, distribute power. If you have only one person in a ministry, if the ministers here are the only ones that can make a decision in their ministries, it's not going to work for anybody in this audience. They have to be able to delegate down to people so that things can move. And you have to take risk because the bad decisions will happen. And so you have to move on. And that's the challenge we all have.
All right. Well, Deborah, you professionally travel the world looking at the ways in which different countries are working on diversifying their economies, making them sort of fit for purpose for the 21st century. So tell me, when you come to Saudi, do you see a country that is in the forefront of delivering positive change, or do you worry about what you see when you compare it with what you see in other fast-developing, fast-growing economies?
Well, Stefan, I've had the opportunity to come to the Kingdom now for a number of years and participate in the GCF, and I want to thank Governor Othman for his leadership in convening this forum on competitive sectors, and also Deputy Governor Prince Saad Al Faisal, who's the partner of the U.S. Council on Competitiveness and actually one of the founders of this Global Federation of Competitiveness Councils. So when you look around the world, what we're seeing is, of course, that everybody's competing for everything, everywhere, all the time. And what's really occurring is an understanding of what are going to be the high value, advanced technological innovation that's going to drive productivity and growth. And we know we have low productivity around the world, low growth, and so it's going to be this innovation capacity that's going to drive this. So what I've seen in the Kingdom over the period that I've been coming is, one, a vision at the top, which is very, very important, that the Kingdom is going to move into the higher value enterprise across all these sectors of knowledge, and that they have some anchor enterprises to lead this. So let's think, for instance, of both Aramco and SABIC. These are 2 huge, complex global enterprises. They compete all over the world. They have deep engineering, deep materials research. They are major global players. And so that is an anchor now as the kingdom moves to diversify into other sectors and to build on that.
So you don't think that the reliance on those vast businesses is a negative for Saudi Arabia?
I think it's an asset now to build the diversification, because the capabilities that they have can easily be brought in to broader sectors, from healthcare, to manufacturing. I mean, manufacturing is an area where I think there's tremendous potential here, because we're now in 21st century smart, automated manufacturing, where, using energy in a more productive way is changing everything. So I can see, again, this expertise moving into the economy in a very dynamic way if there's a regulatory environment, a skills development strategy, and the infrastructure to enable that. And those are where some of the challenges are.
Well, they sure are challenges. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, ministers, but I think in this kingdom today, 70% of the population are under the age of 35, and a huge number of them are under 25. So you have got a vast pool of youth who are coming through schooling and who need jobs. And I guess one of the key questions facing you is, where are the jobs going to come from? And that is something that needs answering if you are to keep the stability that this kingdom so treasures.
Okay, I
Both
do
of you.
agree.
Yeah.
But I think we have lots of options that we can activate to create more jobs. As you know, we have more than 6 million expatriates in Saudi Arabia, helping the kingdom in its own development. If we have or try to enforce more Saudis to work many different jobs, especially in the retail sector, I think we will create so many jobs that have not been activated, and that is great potential. That's something that we can activate and readily available. On the other side also, we are trying to develop the private sector through the development of SMEs. We have a new government organization that will be in charge of SMEs. I am chairing the new organization. I know this organization will have eventually great impact to create more jobs and to promote SMEs to contribute to the development. And the new organization, we will try to develop the whole SME, in many different aspects, but we'll have more focus on innovative projects or innovative ideas. We'll work closely.
Do you think Saudi Arabia is user-friendly for entrepreneurs and for people looking to deliver startups and as you say, SMEs right now?
Let me say it's yes and no. We are good in certain parts. We need to improve in other parts. We do not have yet regulations that focuses on SME development, and that's what we plan to work on with the new organization. I think we have lots of thoughts and ideas that definitely will support SME development.
All right. I think, Minister, you also wanted to come in on that, and then I've got a question from Twitter that I want to put to you. But
Well, I wanted first to go to what Deborah said about Aramco and what Aramco has been doing. A few years ago, when oil was 110 and people thought it was going to continue to go up, and of course we knew otherwise, having been in the industry for 80 years, we identified, as we reformulated the Saudi Aramco strategy, we identified two key risks. One, at a global level, of shifting away from oil because of fears of the scarcity ultimately of oil and the need to replace it, and two, for climate change. And the other risk that we identified is what you've been alluded to, Stephen, which is over-reliance of the nation on oil resources. So our technology, our strategy had a big component of it, which is technology investment. We have in every continent, every corner of the world, technology, collaboration technologies to support our major anchor centers here. And one of our drivers is to make petroleum more environmentally friendly, more sustainable, and more acceptable to societies going forward. And that is touching in every aspect of science. The other aspect of our strategy, which we accepted as a main pillar, is that Saudi Aramco is going to be an engine for a transition away from itself. In a way, we wanted to build strong bridges to get the nation off its dependence on oil. So jobs was an immediate priority. And I mentioned in my opening remarks that one of the 4 pillars of the Kingdom strategy going forward is localization and creating more value-added manufacturing, which His Excellency Dr. Rabeeah talked about. Within the energy and energy-related commodities and businesses and products and services, and many of them are high-tech, we identified 500,000 jobs that we can count them literally one by one, and we're working on them. One of them, as an example, is building a marine manufacturing and services cluster, which will be created in the east coast of Saudi Arabia. It will start by building marine for Saudi Aramco, but ultimately it will provide things like container ships as we go forward and shift away from energy. Education, especially focusing on STEM, is an aspect that Saudi Aramco, although being an oil company, is working because of our legacy in human resource development with the Ministry of Education and other partners as well.
Okay, now I'm going to introduce some questions from our audience that are coming in on Twitter and email, which is fantastic. I'm going to lay down some rules now because we don't have so much time and we've got a lot to get through. I need brief answers to all of these questions. Let's go to some very specific ones. Question coming in anonymous from the audience to you, Minister, but in your role as Aramco chairman. Are you cutting down on any of your spending going forward, and on which sectors?
Obviously, every oil company has had to cut when oil prices go down by some 75%, as it has from 115 to below 30. Fiscal discipline becomes rule number 1 amongst oil executives, and we started doing that at my days as CEO, and I've continued to encourage it as chairman of the board. Our investments in capacity, oil and gas, has not slowed down. We've been able to do a lot of cuts in spending by simply driving down cost. Our service supply chain have become a lot cheaper because of the way the industry is
This question isn't from the audience, it's from Stephen Sackur, and he's the privileged chairman, so he can ask what he likes. How much of a stake are you going to sell off into the private sector, and when?
Well, I'm going to answer you the same I have answered the last couple of weeks, is that this is continued to be...
we want a new answer. We don't want the old answer. We want...
It continues to be studied. We have, as I mentioned, for the benefit of this audience, Stephen, we have two tracks of our analysis. One is to bundle together a significant downstream portfolio of Saudi Aramco involving refining, chemical and marketing businesses, and offering these in a big bundle that is going to be a significant addition to the local Tadawul stock market. Another option, which is for the first time being studied in the history of Saudi Arabia, is to actually offer an appropriate percentage of the company at the top. That means everything we do. And there are both commercial, legal, and sovereignty issues that have to be studied not only within the company and its board, but also with the decision makers within the government of Saudi Arabia.
But the feeling is that that would be a very positive signal about Saudi Arabia and its openness, I guess.
Well, you don't need to guess. That is absolutely, I mean, the fact that the crown jewel of the kingdom, the fact that the company that has been generating the predominant income to the treasury of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is being taken or considered to be taken to the stock market, I think is a sign of the confidence the kingdom has in its enterprises, that they will not only survive, but they will fare well. As the chairman and someone who has spent his career in Saudi Aramco, if we make that decision, Saudi Aramco is going to be the gold standard in the global business in terms of how companies are operated and run. And I think that we just want to make sure that whatever we give up by doing that, we gain from the process of listing.
A sign of confidence or a sign of desperation that you need the cash?
It is not for cash, I assure you, and if we do it, the percentage will not be such that it's going to move the needle significantly in terms of the government proceed. And what you give, and what you get in terms of immediate cash proceeds, obviously the investors will get over time. So I don't think it's a matter of cash. It's a matter, a sign of the time that Saudi Arabia, as you were asking His Excellency Rabeeah, is it open for business or not?
Right.
Are we doing things that everybody else is doing? I think not only are we doing it, we're going the extra mile.
Okay, right. Well, I'm being naughty because I said let's be brief, and I'm encouraging you to, with follow-up questions. I shouldn't be doing that. Now, quick one for you, if I may, Minister Falih. As Health Minister, the question goes, are you planning to IPO any of the Ministry's hospitals or facilities? If so, when can we expect it to happen? Quick as you can.
We will initially corporatize our healthcare delivery system. Some of them will go into foundations, nonprofit foundations. So the separation from government is a certainty. What happens afterwards in terms of privatization is a process that we will take our time and do it in an orderly fashion.
Okay. This one for you two, Ambassador and Deborah as well. Question from Twitter. What role models do you think can Saudi Arabia look to globally for inspiration when it comes to discussing this 21st century transformation agenda? This question comes from Pavan Gandhok at UCLA. So where in the world do you think Saudi Arabia should be looking for inspiration?
Well, this is going to be a little off the wall because if you, Stephen, if you said to me, Ambassador, you just have 60 seconds on this panel. That's all the time I'm going to give you. So what is the one thing you would stress? I would say, as a father of 4 and the grandfather of 7, the most important thing is, for every Saudi here, is how are you going to educate those primary and secondary school kids so that they can compete in this world. That to me is the most important. That, Minister Falih, my good friend, is your crown jewel, not Aramco. That's your crown jewel.
Yeah, I agree. And Deborah, your thoughts on that? You travel the world looking at innovative growth plans and models.
Well, I would just echo what the ambassador said, though, about the importance of people, because at the end of the day, it's the people that innovate and create the value. And while some say having this big youth population is a problem, it is a huge opportunity. I mean, Saudi youth are probably the most connected on the internet and mobility. There's a lot of social innovation underway. I mean, I just read an example of a young woman who created this very successful entrepreneurial catering business with a new business model using WhatsApp instead of a website. So I see the young people as absolutely a crown jewel. But what I would recommend, and you can look at Korea, particularly Korea, I think, is an example. They started with absolutely nothing after World War II. And yet they are a technological powerhouse. Why? Because they invested in R&D across many sectors. They're now spending more on research and development than the United States, pushing up to 5% of GDP. So what's the potential here? You have KAUST. KAUST is one of the leading global universities now. What the former king did, and King Abdullah, in creating KAUST is a huge game changer. I got to be there in November, and to see the young people in graduate work there doing advanced work on membranes and materials. Materials, of course, are going to be one of the platforms for everything in terms of next generation innovation in biotech and nanotech and even IT. So building advanced research capability here and bringing young people in to do that. Those two I see very strongly.
And that, when you talk about KAUST, you talk about a crossover and a partnership between academia, private sector, public sector. You do need that sort of mindset of openness, of imaginative thinking, of being prepared to sort of break the mold. You know, God knows that's what we saw in Silicon Valley and we still see in the United States. For all of its problems, it has people who are prepared to break the mold. When you look at Saudi Arabia today, do you see a willingness to embrace that kind of non-conformist thinking, that kind of, without wishing to use the cliche, but outside the box thinking?
Well, I certainly see some imagination. And I think one place where it needs to be unleashed, of course, are the women entrepreneurs. And a few years ago, at the GCF when the theme was entrepreneurship and awards were being given, I think 5 or 6 out of 10 were given to women entrepreneurs who were doing very creative things. So again, how you link in the education system and this environment for innovation, creativity, imagination, but it has to be coupled with some R&D capability at the frontier. I'll give you another example at KAUST. Dow Chemical, they could invest in research all over the world. Lockheed Martin, General Electric, why are they putting advanced research capability in that university? Because of the people and the capacity. I mean, they have one of the most advanced supercomputers there. That's unbelievable. So there's great potential. I'd like to see 5 CAFs all over Saudi Arabia, not 1.
All right. Listen, I've got loads more questions coming in electronically, but I want to take a couple of hands up just because it's nice to mix up the digital questions and the hands up questions. So if we can get roving microphones, there's a gentleman there who's got his hand up. So sir, stand up and we'll get the microphone to you. Just tell us your name and give us a brief question because we've only got about 6 minutes left.
Sure. Basil Al-Gharaini, BNG Financial Group. Very brief statement. I think one of the drivers for growth for the next 5 years will be through consolidation. Right now, we are engaged in 2 major transactions in the healthcare sector, trying to merge polyclinics and small hospitals in Riyadh and Jeddah. At the same time, we are also working on the food sector. My question to Mr. Falih and Mr. Rabeeah, what are you going to do to make the mergers and acquisitions in Saudi Arabia easier and more efficient to stimulate that growth?
Okay, thanks for the question. Which minister would like to take that one?
So in healthcare, I didn't mention, part of our strategy is that the participation of private sector in provision of healthcare will more than double in the next 5 years. This will be accompanied by overhauling all of our regulations that govern how the private sector will participate. So we're not going to launch for the foreseeable future any new hospital. We'll finish what we have in our pipeline in terms of projects, and then we will give opportunities. But our standards of quality for private sector will also increase. So the doubling is not going to come with no cost. And I think as we raise the standards, only highly qualified providers, which will probably need scale. So I think that will lead in the area of consolidation.
Okay. With the new company law, there are more facilitations to promote consolidations and acquisitions. Also, we are trying to promote M&As through SIDF for manufacturing companies. We are studying financing acquisitions and M&As or mergers and acquisitions through giving loans to manufacturing companies to promote more consolidations, which will make our manufacturing companies in a stronger position. We have other regulations that may support also consolidations and acquisitions. The valuation authority that we have that was created recently help also to bring more professional valuations for companies in addition to all kind of valuations that also will support M&As.
Okay, thank you, Minister. One more from the floor, and then I've got a couple more, and then we're going to have to wrap. But you, sir, again, if you wouldn't mind, just introduce yourself and a very quick question, if you would.
Yeah, right. Thank you very much. My name is Ihsan Babalega. The question is, do we have a roadmap to be more competitive? Because as we know, many countries try to transform. Very few are successful. In that way, to be more competitive so we can substitute our imports and promote our exports. Thank you very much.
So, a clear roadmap, is there one? There's a lot of talk, but is there a clear roadmap?
Okay.
Both ministers looking like they want to say something, but not quite sure who's going to speak first.
No, definitely. To make Saudi Arabia more attractive, we have to be more competitive. There is great competition among different countries to attract more investments and to promote also local investments. So part of our mandate is to be more of real facilitators, to have better regulations, better procedures within the government. I know Sagia is working on a plan to even more make Saudi Arabia more competitive. We definitely support this plan. I know they have the plan and different projects to achieve that target. Hopefully, with the new enthusiasm to have more transformation into Saudi Arabia, this will be part of the new transformation project.
I have a question which, in a sense, is connected. I'm not going to ask you on the panel to fix the political security problems of the Middle East. We don't have time, apart from anything else. But I am going to ask you this. Do you think there is a danger that all of the planning right now that's going into transitioning the Saudi economy, making it more diversified, more efficient, more innovative, could it be blown off course in a very big way by the degree of turbulence, instability in the region as a whole? Because frankly, Saudi Arabia cannot ring-fence itself from the troubles of this region.
Well, let me answer for the ministers.
I'm not sure an American should be doing that. It doesn't necessarily look good.
I've got their authority and permission to do that. No, seriously, as a practical experience in the United States, some of the best times to make change, global competitiveness requires change, serious change, change in culture. All the things you mentioned, Stephen, at the beginning of when you introduced us. The best times to do that are these times, when oil prices are down, the budgets are tough, when there is problems of security and instability in the region, when the world is going through a lot of turmoil. This is the best time to make the tough decisions, because the people out there, the Saudi people, understand that something has to change. Good times, nobody wants change.
That's well put, an interesting point. Deborah?
And the U.S. Council on Competitiveness was formed 30 years ago when we had our issues with Japan. It was exactly why we formed a council of CEOs and university presidents, labor leaders, to deal with what are going to be our productivity drivers. How are we going to maintain our prosperity? So I see, on the economic side, this is a tremendous time of opportunity to really leapfrog. And the governor last night talked about the quantum leaps. Well, this is the time to do that. And one thing I'd like to propose is to unleash the young people here through some of the democratization of innovation that's underway. I don't believe there's a Saudi Kickstarter. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think there's a Saudi maker movement. I'm not sure that there is. But with 3D additive manufacturing and the IT and the social media, all sorts of things could happen. So it's a time of potential abundance, not scarcity, really moving into a new world that's really, really exciting if we all marshal our forces and let things happen. Take some risks.
Well, Deborah, you're a force for positivity, and I love it, but I'm going to I want very brief final thoughts from both of you ministers. You've contributed fantastically to this panel, but just address my point that all of the big talk right now, the positive talk about Saudi Arabia's opportunity to change in a very positive way, it could be blown off course by what is happening in this region.
Stephen, if you look at the last 4 or 5 years since the Middle East has been in turmoil, Saudi Arabia has done better than ever in its history, not only in terms of top-line numbers of GDP growth and exports and the overall balances of the economy, but in terms of the qualitative investments is strong, and it's moving in the right direction, and it's been propelled more than ever before during the last year with the deep and broad integrated studies about transforming the economy, enabling new sectors, getting ministers and agencies and major players in the economies to work together under the umbrella of the Supreme Council for Economy and Development, and reaching out to international partners and investors in various sectors that haven't looked at Saudi Arabia as not only a place to do business for the market of Saudi Arabia, but a place to do business for a broader region of the Middle East and Africa. The Middle East will emerge from the current troubles that we're suffering, and they will be decades of growth and prosperities as the people look for opportunities. And Saudi Arabia is going to be the anchor economy We're going to have all of the enablers, including our future crown jewels, the young people. They will be enabled by the biggest education investment probably ever invested anywhere over the last 10 years in the universities and the primary education system that is continuing to evolve, and the great environment for doing business. You mix it all together, and I think our future is very, very bright indeed. Are there threats? Yes, but I think they bring us stronger together.
All right.
The sense of nationalism is strong, and I think it's a fuel rather than a headwind.
Okay, Minister Rabeeah, final thought from you, and it's got to be quick.
Okay, first, I'm not a politician to know and forecast what will happen. But what I can say, the region has been in turbulence for so many years. And Saudi Arabia survived all of these things that are happening in the region, even in tougher times. So I'm very optimistic. Things will move and grow in the future. We are working to diversify the economy. I think it is the best time to invest given the market is low. The smart people are the ones who invest when the market is low, and with the diversification, we in the government will support more investments and more private sector participation.
All right, well, Minister, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, we've slightly overstayed our welcome in terms of time, but that's because it's been such a fascinating panel discussion. I'm just reminded at the very end of something I heard from an American politician when I was based in Washington. He said, you know, Stephen, in the midst of every crisis, there is opportunity. You just need to know how to exploit it and how to find it. I guess that is the question and the challenge Saudi Arabia faces this very day. It's been a great panel discussion, a great start to GCF 2016. Thank you so much for being so patient, for giving great questions, and thanks most of all to our wonderful panel. Panelists, thank you very much indeed.
حضورنا الكريم، نرحب الآن بالرئيس ورئيس مجلس الإدارة لشركة لوكهيد مارتن كوربوريشن ميرلين هيوسن.
Ladies and gentlemen, Chairman, President, and CEO Lockheed Martin Corporation, Ms. Marilyn Hewson.